Wait, hang on. Is it working? Is it working now? Well, the red light's on, so... Hello? I'm the Canary, and this is Robot Jocks. So this film was made in 1990 and directed by Stuart Gordon. Gordon felt that giant robots, they'd been done before in animation, but not in live action, and he wanted to have a crack at it, this being, long before the live action Transformers films ever came on. The animated show was actually the inspiration for this movie. I mean, sure, there is several decades worth of live action tokusatsu out there, but this is something that hasn't really been done before in the West, so I won't hold it against him. Even though the film was inspired by the Transformers, the only real similarity between the two is that they both have giant robots. I mean, the bots in this film, they're piloted mechs. They can't think for themselves. It's in a far-off dystopic future. The humans are the focus of the story. So yeah, no real relation there. So, basic rundown of the plot is that in the far-off distant future of whenever the hell this bloody thing takes place, war has been outlawed because, that's something that seems doable. If only we'd thought of that sooner. How the hell do you enforce that anyway? And all territorial disputes are solved through getting two giant robots to beat the piss out of each other. Now that's an idea I can get behind. I mean, skip all the death, poverty, and misery that comes from war and just get straight to the good stuff. So we've got two factions that do the whole UN-sanctioned rock'em sock'em robots. The Market, aka America, and the Confederates, aka, I swear to God, these guys aren't Russian, but just as an aside, guys, they're totally Russian. With the main plot focusing around their fight for Alaska, or more importantly, their resources. Our main character is a market jock who goes by Achilles, and our main villain is a jock for the Confederate named Alexander. And most of the film revolves around the build-up to their final fight. To be honest, I was expecting something a lot worse than what I actually got out of it. It's actually a pretty enjoyable film. I mean, yeah, it's kind of dumb, but at least the characters are pretty decent. I mean, scholars aren't going to be writing about these guys for decades to come, but, I mean, they're passable. Enough to carry you through to the next robot fight, so, hey, that's something. Achilles is likable enough. Nothing overly memorable about the guy, but, he does well enough. And Tex, who's Achilles' coach and a former robot fighting champion himself, is a pretty fun, over-the-top Texas stereotype, with everything that comes with it.
That's why we're saving him. To fight for Alaska. Alaska, big deal. It is big. Oil, timber, the goddamn Eskimos.
Tex Conway?
That sly Jap son of a bitch.
And Matsumoto, the market's mechanic, is... okay, nothing about him really stands out. He does get a decent scene towards the end, but he's just kind of there. He just kind of puts weapons on the robot. It's not horrible. And finally, Athena, a genetically engineered jock made only to fight. Well, I mean, I can understand where she was coming from just as a person, but I wasn't overly fond of her. I found her a little annoying. The film opens up with a robot fight. Alexander fighting a market jock, Hercules, who... okay, he doesn't do all that well.
You're next, Achilles!
Guess who the bad guy for this movie is? So after killing Hercules, the Confederates move on to take over Alaska, that being the prize in the next fight. In the fight to keep Alaska, right as Achilles is about to win, Alexander fires a rocket punch, because of course he's got a rocket punch. I mean, it's a giant robot movie, it's kind of in the contract, I guess. It malfunctions and heads for the bleachers, and to try and save the people, Achilles jumps in front of the fist, which stops it from hurting the spectators, which is good, but then it knocks his robot into the spectators, which is less than good. Really not good. So Achilles quits fighting because of the whole, killing innocent spectators while trying to save them thing.
You take care of yourself, you hear?
Me too.
Crash and burn.
That's just for jocks.
But he does decide to come back when he sees that Athena has been chosen as the next pilot.
Event. The first female RoboJock, Athena.
Just as a bit of a side note here, the method that they use to pick the best pilot is It's just kind of dumb. Yeah, I know, it's a giant robot movie, so it's kind of dumb by default, but what the hell does a shaking jungle gym have to do with driving a robot? I mean, they lose several good pilots over this. Pilots which were grown and trained from birth. Yep, just throw a small fortune down the drain for a test that doesn't really contribute anything. In fact, earlier on, they showed that the troops are taught and trained martial arts. Again, what does that have to do with driving a giant robot? Yes, the robots can mimic their pilots' movements, but I mean, look at these things. They don't exactly have the largest range of motion. All they can do is this kind of awkward wobble and sort of move their arms, I guess. But anyway, when Achilles comes back, Athena's less than enthused. So she disguises herself as Achilles and she hijacks the robot, which no one seems to notice until this happens.
Commander? Hey, this ain't Achilles?
How Achilles doesn't have the same reaction to that, I'll never know. You think at some point she would have had to take her helmet off? Or at least, talk to her? She would have had to talk to someone at least. Now that she's stuck in the mech, she needs to fight Alexander, which doesn't go over that well. Probably would have gone a lot better if you'd picked a pilot more suited for the job. Would have been a bit easier to find the right person if you didn't go with the whole, shaking jungle gym. Or kill some of your pilots. That's thrown it out there. Anyway, when Athena loses, Alexander is told to refrain from killing her, or else the match will go to the market by default. Okay, so let's go back to Alexander for a bit. Throughout the movie, he's shown as a psychopath. Sure, when he's out of the mech, he comes off as a little dickish, but, mostly a sane and almost pleasant kind of guy. And then he gets into his mech, where he's a little more unstable.
You're next! Achilles!
For the Confederation, hold your position.
I mean, prior to the film starting, we're told that he's already killed several market pilots. Hell, the film opens up with him openly killing Hercules after he'd won. He still goes for the kill just because he enjoys it. So after all of that, why are they only stopping him now? Is it just because Athena's unconscious? Is that it? Because she's a gene jock? Because, I mean, we've seen how, they treat gene jocks. They clearly don't care if they're willing to go with the shaking jungle gym thing. I mean, he's killed like 10 people so far. Why is this so special? So Achilles steps in, and so they fight, and 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 they fight. Which, in all honesty, is actually a pretty cool fight. During the fight, Achilles' mech is taken down, so he's got to get out to fight him on foot. And so towards the end of the fight, Achilles' mech is taken down, and so he needs to find another way to beat Alexander. Which he does by shooting his own rocket fist back at him. Because again, giant robot movie. It needs a rocket fist. And so with their mechs down, they just kind of keep going. And the film finishes on a movement that's cheesy, but I still kind of like. Gordon's touches on the film are mostly shown through the effects, most of them being practical, a lot better than you'd expect a film using actual models. From 1990 no less. I mean, okay, some parts of the models have aged better than others, a fair amount of detail to them, the overall design is also pretty cool. They give off a bit of a Battletech vibe to them, kind of reminds you of a Thor or a Battlemaster, something along those lines. And the models of themselves, again, they're pretty detailed. You can see they put quite a bit of work into these. And I like how they go for the more of the, okay, even though this is about, just singular mechs, just both fighting each other, I like how they go for more of a real robot design, as opposed to more of a super robot one. I like how they go for a real robot design. Again, going back to, Battletech, maybe even a bit of Gundam thrown in there. I like how they just give it more of a realistic kind of look. Okay, realistic, being relative to the giant robot genre. Again, I have got one problem, though, with the design. The legs are just a little too skinny, in my opinion. I mean, they don't look like they can support all that weight. They need something just a little thicker, like the BattleTech mechs. I mean, the upper half looks BattleTech, the lower half is not quite there. And the way the mechs actually move is just a little awkward. Not with the kind of weight I'd expect a 50-ton mech to move with. And some of the stop motion work is a little jerky, but I think you can chalk most of that up to the time it was made at. Some of the stop motion work is a little jerky, but you can chalk most of that up to the time it was made. I mean, it's not really a big thing, it's just some of their more finer movements are just a little off. But on the whole, I mean, these are minor nitpicks. They still look kind of cool. And I honestly do miss the old stop motion days, even if it is a little jerky. At the very least, they are working with actual models. I mean, they look pretty sick. Okay, I glossed over this a little bit in the fight with Athena, but during her fight, her robot's knocked down, so Alexander decides to pull out this. Yep, he has a chainsaw penis. And he just teabags her with his chainsaw penis. This has nothing to do with the review. It's just something I thought you needed to know. I mean, aren't you honestly glad that you could see this? And I think the critics of the times were a bit too harsh on the film. I think the critics of the time were a bit too harsh on this. I mean, okay, yeah, plot and characters, little stock standard, nothing all that revolutionary. It's still pretty decent. I mean, the actual thing we came to see, the bots, they look pretty cool. And sure, the animation itself isn't all that fantastic, especially when you compare it to some of the modern stuff, but, it's aged a lot better than it has any right to be. So, I mean, at the end of the day, if you need a good popcorn flick with giant robots, it sure as hell beats the crap out of the Transformers sequels. I mean, this is probably going to be the closest thing to a BattleTech movie we'll ever get, so that's also a plus. So anyway, crash and burn.